All right, recording is happening. So this is the Crucial Conversations Lunch and Learn, as they say when you get on an airline. If that's not your destination, please exit now. So that's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour and for the next few weeks, 1 hour a week, and hopefully we're going to add some value to you guys and answer some of your questions. So before we get started, I want to try to get everybody to introduce themselves. I'll start it out. Just tell me your name, where you're from, where you're joining us from. My name is Larry Moss. I'm the owner of Azimuth Consulting, and I'm here in the DC metro area. I'm glad to be your host today. So I'll go to JT, and then Brett, you'll be on deck.
Yeah, again, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're at. JT, I go by JT, Jeremy Thompson. I'm retired military. I'm co-located with Larry here in Northern Virginia, and I support Azimuth as well.
All right. Thanks, JT. Brett, you're up, and then we'll go to Sherry. You're muted, Brett.
There we go. That makes it a little easier. I thought you guys could read lips, but
Oh, we can, but
nice to meet you. My name is Brett. I also am retired military, known Larry for a long time. Work with him and JT and Azimuth, and glad to be here with you folks today.
all right. Thanks, Brett. Sherry, you're up, and then Brandon, you're on deck.
All right. Well, I am Sherry Reese. I am Larry's sister. I have known him since he was born, so a long time.
Don't
Uh,
be asking her any questions about what that was
These
like.
could be
my
some great
lips are
conversations.
sealed. And I live in Omaha, Nebraska. And just glad to meet you guys and be having this little hour discussion.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. Brandon, you're up, followed by Josh.
All right, good afternoon, Brandon Krippner. Work for the city of Winchester in the Fire and Rescue Department, and I live in the city of Winchester, and we like to call it the real Northern Virginia. So,
All right. Thanks. Joshua, you're up, and then John, you can close it out.
All right, nice to meet you all. My name is Josh Shanahan. I'm also here at the City of Winchester. I do the facilities maintenance and custodial management here at the Jim Barnett Park.
Awesome. So you get to work with Corey, right?
I do, yeah.
Awesome. All right. John, you're up.
All right, my name is John Hudson. Work for the city of Winchester as well. The assistant parking division manager, working underneath Corey as well.
Okay. So Corey had you guys show up, and then he didn't. No, I got an email from him. He said he had somebody that a contractor come in that he's been trying to get a meeting with, and so I fully understand that. We'll get him the recording. All right, so let's get this thing started. I'm going to show my slides. Let me see. Where did my share button go? There we go. All right, hopefully everybody can see that, right?
Now the screen is black on my end.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on a
Me
second.
too. There
How
we
about
go.
now? Okay. Yeah, I think the internet's running slow. I don't know why. So we are in the Crucial Conversations Lunch and Learn, and on behalf of JT and Brett, I'd like to welcome you to the conversation because this is where we want to we want to go through and kind of work and provide some tools for you guys to help you move through these crucial conversations. All right. And these are conversations that happen, every day, that a lot of times what we do is we forget that they're actually going on and we're often not prepared for it. So that's our hope in the next few weeks that we're going to help you with. So the purpose is to move from hesitation to confidence in having these crucial conversations because a lot of these things, we that pit that comes up in our stomach that causes us to avoid the conversation, then we tend to put it off, and that's that hesitation that can also cause some issues later on. And what to expect while we're in here, we're going to talk about, what to look for in recognizing the need to have a crucial conversation. And we're going to discuss on setting the environment for those conversations and then actually having them and then following up after them. So that's the flow of what we're going to go through over the next few weeks. Um, and there will be some applications inside. We're going to talk and get you guys comments. So this is a very interactive lunch and learn. We want to hear what you have to say because your opinion is valuable and it helps us to design even more conversations and lunch and learns as well. So first of all, I want you to think about it's kind of an icebreaker. If you don't know what that is, there's a picture that shows us. We're going to have an icebreaker. All right. Think of a conversation, a difficult conversation that you've had, and in one word, how did it make you feel? And you can drop that in the chat, and then we'll kind of go over that. So it can be, a good result, or maybe it was something that didn't make you feel as wonderful as you'd hope. But just drop that in the chat and let us see what you're coming up with. Man, my screen is running slow here. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Welcome, Pam. I'm glad you can make it. So we got awkward, anxious, accomplished and peaceful. Okay. Uncomfortable, nervous. All right. So what do you think it was, John, that made you feel uncomfortable?
It probably was just based on the personal relationship, that I had with the employee. So, there is a line that you need to follow, being in management. You have to separate those two, your personal relationship and then obviously how things need to go during work hours. So it was just a uncomfortable conversation, and I think the individual understood that I had a job to do, obviously, and we just needed to make sure we were on that right side of the line.
Yeah. Well, and judging from some of the other responses, I think we all share that similar feeling sometimes, whether, I was nervous about it or feeling kind of awkward or that anxiousness of anticipating what's coming up. So I'm kind of curious because Brett's got accomplished and peaceful. So let's go to Zen Brett and find out what did he think caused this, or was that allowed him to be peaceful in this conversation?
At times we go into crucial conversations, good ones and bad ones, that we focus too much on what the other person's going to say or how they're going to react. I don't know. I don't have any control however somebody else reacts. I do have control and responsibility over how I do. So by focusing on what I need to say and doing it honestly for the best outcome, for the best of, what we can generate between us, but focusing on my part of it gives me a piece of, or a sense rather of accomplishment and peace when I have honest to God, said what I think really needs to be said. And again, I say it correctly. I say it friendly, in a competent manner, in a compassionate manner, but I express myself correctly and fully, then that does give me a sense of peace.
No, absolutely. And that's where we want to try to get to at the end of these series is where we're a little more comfortable having these conversations, regardless of who they're with, the topic we're talking about, or even the environment we're in. So first of all, we need to define what is a crucial conversation. Okay. So is it, well, you know what? It's based upon your production. It's maybe critical feedback, or maybe it's, hey, congratulations, you did a great job, and I want to reward you with, the job you did. It's still a conversation we're having. Or maybe it's just a continuous conversation on growth, personal growth, professional growth, but these conversations always elicit some type of emotion. Okay. So, what emotions usually show up when you know a conversation may turn difficult? What do you think? Anybody want to throw something in? You know it's going to be difficult.
Well, I can say for me, here that's happened lately is my husband was a photographer, has been for many, 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 many years, and he sold his building. And so he's still going to be a photographer, but work on location or work outdoors. But selling that building, it was like death to him because
Mm,
his father started the business back in the early 50s, and then he and his brother bought it out in the 90s. And so all of a sudden it was like to him a death.
yeah.
And it was so hard for him once he sold the building and he had to get everything out. As you can see, a lot is piled behind me. But
That's another conversation you got
exactly.
to have.
But it was so hard to talk to him because I knew he felt that way. And
Yeah.
I kept saying, honey, let's get this done. We have to get this done. And it was hard. But we did get everything finished and all, but I just knew it would be a difficult conversation. And it is. He still feels sadness. It's been a couple of
Yeah.
weeks since he got out, and that emptiness is still there.
Well, and that's a great point is the reason there's emotion involved in these conversations is because there's a relationship somewhere in there, whether it's personal or professional. You've got a connection and you have a reason to make sure the conversation goes well. But what we'll talk about here in a little bit is how do we control that emotion, or how do we, and we can't do that unless we first recognize that it is there. So recognizing that the emotion is part of preparing for that conversation. Okay. So what is a crucial conversation, or what's involved in it? Well, there's usually involves high stakes, right? It could be money, it could be advancement if it's an employee. It could be the making or breaking of a personal relationship. All right. And that can cause fear of going into the conversation because we don't know what the outcome is. So we start doubting ourselves. Well, we want to be able to give you a framework that can alleviate some of that. But a crucial conversation usually has some type of stake involved, and it involves differences of opinion, right? Because I wouldn't be having the conversation, and life would be so much easier if all of you people just thought the way I did, right? So, and I know, and I'm not going to ask you who, but I know you've all thought that about an employee, a loved one, probably a spouse somewhere along the way, and but yet we've got to understand that not everybody's perspective and outlook are the same as ours, so we have to consider that. And there's always strong emotions around a crucial conversation. All right, so you could be like this little girl that's like, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm just crying, and it's not just your emotions, but it's the emotions on the others with the other party, and those emotions may fluctuate throughout the conversation, and that makes it even more difficult. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to understand that. And one of the things, we do at Azimuth is we always start out with our engagements with clients with awareness, who we are, how we are, before we can move into understanding who and how others are. Because that's the important. If we don't understand that, then the emotions can run awry. So here's one I always, who is involved in a crucial conversation? Okay. And we've got a variety of folks here. Maybe you're a leader. So, in the corporate world, it usually involves a leader somewhere. Maybe it's peers, right? Those are conversations we have. Brett and I have known each other for, oh my God, since 1983. So, we're peers. I'm comfortable with telling Brett he's out of his mind sometimes, and he's the same way he's comfortable with telling me that. But those are conversations that we can have based upon our relationship.
Let,
Um, Go ahead.
if I might, just for a second, let me jump
Yes.
on that because we're talking about conversation, and it's a very elastic term. So I can have a conversation with a, barista at Starbucks, and I can have a conversation with my wife or my kids, and
Hmm.
technically it means the same thing, but in reality it really doesn't, because everything I say to my wife has a certain tone or certain context. There's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
Um, and consequently, the way it's taken is part of that context. So, if you want to think about like salt's a kind of a bitter herb, but it's very good in balance with foods. So if I need to tell Larry something that's just, if I was his boss and it was just really, he had screwed up and I have to really come down hard, but definitively, it's going to
Hmm.
come a whole lot easier if that's not the only time I've talked to Larry in the last year or the last month. If the only time Larry sees me is when I come to yell at him, then I've really set a bad context to even start a crucial conversation.
Right. No, absolutely. And that kind of, we've given some apparent who's here, but there's also everybody else. Like Brett was saying, we're having conversations that could be crucial, whether it's talking to the barista and because they messed up your order, that becomes a crucial conversation because now it's impacting you and it impacts that other person. So how do we approach it? And there's different ways that we approach. One of the things I forgot to do here real quick. Let me see. I wanted to throw a poll up here for you guys to take and get your opinion. So, when faced with a crucial conversation, do you tend to avoid it, confront it head on, or over prepare? All right, so it looks like we've got a couple over prepares here. Um, the majority is confront it head on. Okay, I like that. And someone that avoids it. And that's, you know what? That's okay. But these are pretty much the three ways we approach it. So as we're talking about the who is involved, let me ask you this question. You can drop it in chat, and if somebody wants to kind of expand on their answer, that'd be great. But who do you struggle with mostly when having crucial conversations? Is it your leaders? Having a conversation with your boss, or maybe your direct reports? I'm with you, Brandon.
Oh,
I I think the spouses have it. And why is that? Why is it that we struggle with the person that's closest to us and we should be able to, have a conversation with? What's the big deal? Right? Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, I think because you care the most, right? And so when you are extremely vulnerable with someone, or there's so much at stake, right? When you're talking about what is a crucial conversation, how much does it matter? It's really complex. It's a lot easier to have these siloed relationships in which it's just professional or just personal. But we also recognize that professional can impact your personal and so on and so forth. And one person that you trust the most, the one person that you lean in on the most, or at least you should, or at least that's the goal for most people, is your spouse. So you don't want to
Yeah.
let it down. You don't want them to think less of you. You don't want to, impact that trust, or So there's just more at stake, basically.
Well, and I think the word you said was vulnerable, and it's that vulnerability. We don't feel as vulnerable in the workplace. If you do, then that's a different conversation. But that vulnerability is not a weakness, right? It's a strength as a leader, and I think you're right. The conversation could tend to hurt more. That's the fear that we have. But it also grows us closer together. And, John, you mentioned trying to separate that personal touch with the professional touch with your employees. And you have to see that line, but there's a balance there. But yeah, I agree. I think everybody would say when we have a personal relationship with the person we're having the conversation with, that makes it a little harder and even more important that we get it right. So,
Well, I think too, if
go
I can
ahead.
say, remembering to use kindness in there, especially with a spouse. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
married for 42 years here. And the thing about it, we may agree on things, but we have different ways of going about it.
Yeah.
And so then that causes tension when you're trying to have, say, a crucial conversation. And it's just working through that and
Yeah.
remembering to be kind. To
Right.
me, I used to be easy to blow up, but over the years, I've learned to control that and remember to be kind.
Yes. We are our mother's children, Sherry. I'll just
No
I'll just
joke.
leave it there.
That was
So
good.
so let's talk about, when do we have these conversations? When are they needed, right? So there could be when we're giving feedback, right? How are you doing? Where could you improve, right? And a lot of leaders struggle with giving feedback because maybe they wait too long and the only feedback I give you is in writing, right? At your annual review or your quarterly review. But those crucial conversations need to be going on all the time, okay? So is it performance related? Is it only during conflict? Is that the only time we see that we're having crucial conversations when we have conflict that has an opportunity to explode and change the culture of our organization, change the culture of our relationship? If we're waiting until there's already a problem, then we've waited too long. Or what about decision making, right? Because rather than making decisions in a vacuum, it's important that we get others' perspectives, but sometimes that is a conversation that becomes hard and crucial because maybe we go into that conversation knowing that our opinion or our idea is not supported by others. So we don't want to hear their answer or we don't want to hear their concerns because we're holding on to that idea. But other perspectives help us grow and innovate because they may see something that we don't. So when do you find that you're best at having these conversations? What any of these areas resonate with you?
But JT could hold forth on this because in my experience in the military, JT was if I'm giving you your annual feedback, that should not be the first time you know what's on there. You should have a really good idea of what's coming on your annual feedback because I've had that conversation ongoing with you. Is that the way you did it in the Marines?
Absolutely. I mean, fitness reporting, we always said, is not a counseling session.
Right.
Counseling should be ongoing. And what you strive for is when you kind of snap the chalk line of, hey, this is what I've seen your performance being. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Like you shouldn't be surprised by anything that comes out of your performance eval. It really should just be solidifying, clarifying, and then just saying this is where we're at today and how can we move forward. So I would agree completely.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about when we're helping develop leaders and they're going through some of our programs is the power of clarity. And especially as leaders, and what you guys are talking about, if I'm clear up front of the roles, expectations, and outcomes and responsibilities of someone that I'm leading, and I know they understand it completely from the onset, then when they're not performing to the level that we've agreed on, and you're right, Brett, when we have that conversation, it should not be a surprise. If I'm calling you into the office, you're going to know why you're coming in, and if it reaches to the point to where I'm going to have to let you go, it should not be a surprise either, right? But where leaders fail a lot of times is they don't have that crucial conversation up front, because I think we get into this mentality that what we're talking about is something that there's a problem we're addressing, and that's the crucial conversation. But it's really crucial to be clear up front and to set the stage. And I know we're going to talk about more of that next week of what it looks like to prepare for a crucial conversation. But we can avoid a lot of things if we do this and we apply the framework that you guys are going to learn in this series, because that's what makes the conversations easier, more effective, and allows for growth. So here's the other one, right? Where do we do this? Because, do I have to bring you into my office for this? Maybe it's a conversation with a loved one. Do you set family time? And all these are possibilities, because the where can happen anywhere. It could be in meetings, right? Where you're maybe you need to have a conversation with your boss who's conducting the meeting. So then you've got to think, is now the appropriate time? Is it something that we can engage with during the meeting, or do I need to wait and set an appointment and a time afterwards to deal with this? Because, in meetings, it may not be the appropriate time because you don't want to upset the agenda, right? You don't want to now get negative behavior. But sometimes those conversations happen in meetings and one-on-ones, right? That's when maybe your direct report, you're talking to a family member, a loved one. If you got kids, we always having some one-on-one conversations with kids. But where is that taking place? Is it in the car ride to and from an event, to school? All of these things are opportunities to have the conversations as long as you're prepared for it. And we got the hallway conversation. We used to call these water coolers conversations, right? I'll give you an example. I know during COVID, when we were all isolated, everybody was at home, so that social contact was missing. One of the things I stood up with my team is water cooler conversation. It was virtual, but we came on board once a week, came online, and it's like, what do you want to talk about? Right? We'd talk about movies. We'd talk about the favorite restaurant that everybody was missing, which turned out to be a great conversation one day, because here in the DC metro area, there was some of my friends loved eating at these restaurants down in DC, and then somebody would go, "Oh yeah, they closed down." And it's like, "Oh no." But it was an opportunity just to have conversations. Was it crucial? Absolutely, because we were going through a time where we were missing that social engagement. All right. So any opportunity that's available, the where can be anywhere. Okay. And hey, virtual, we're having those conversations right now. And especially with the remote workforce, so many people work remotely. My wife's worked remote since we moved here in 2011, and she's got a new job working remotely. Well, how do you build connections in a remote environment? You can still do it. Doing things like we're doing, joining and being part of a community, even if it's, virtually, can still impact those that you're having conversations with. So, do you have any examples of maybe where you've had a good conversation, and maybe it's not one of these, maybe it was somewhere, where you're on an airplane or whatever? What do you got?
Well, I
Please
can
nobody
say,
say the bathroom. I don't want to hear that.
well, I can say for me, it's been maybe sometimes in a parking lot. I've been president of Omaha Artists here, and sometimes there were certain people that I had to talk to that's on the, say, committees or whatever, and I didn't want to do it during, say, our board meeting, but later. And so we would be talking out in the parking lot afterwards, and that was a good thing. It worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
I've had really good conversations with my husband when we're on date night, because we're already in that environment where we're not looking at our phones, we're not distracted by everything else, and the purpose is to connect. And I mean, not devastating, crucial conversations, but
Right.
the important ones about what's going on with my son or our son and things like that, the other person being accepting of what you might have to say to me helps.
No, that's awesome. And you're right, setting the right environment. Now I know next week Brett will talk more about this, but you know, think about it even let's take it for a second and think about in the workplace, right? It may be easy for you to say, hey, so and so, come to my office so we can have a conversation. Okay. You're not thinking anything about that. But what message is it sending? How often does your employee come to your office? I know, in the military and, when I was in the federal government, and a lot of corporate leaders say the same thing that I have an open door policy. All right. What does that mean? Well, you can come by my office anytime and talk. Really? Do you really mean that? That I can just, I'm having a problem and I need to go talk to the boss today. That just because you say it may not mean that that message is getting across. If you truly have an open door policy and you're open to being approached, then you've created a great culture. Now, I had a boss that every morning he would walk around. He was 2 floors above us, and he would come down and he'd walk around the area. There were about, I don't know, 50 or 60 of us on this floor, and he'd go by each office and each cubicle every morning and just say hello. So we knew he was approachable. If we wanted to talk to him then, we could, or I felt comfortable going up to his office at any time, and if he wasn't in an appointment, we could have a conversation. Plus he was a Cowboys fan, so that added some good relationships. We won't talk about Cowboys right now, but so what about you guys? Do you have any more examples of maybe what was made it comfortable to have those conversations?
So, Larry, to add on to what you were saying about, bringing somebody to the office, I know that that does bring a certain sense of anxiousness, and they're already kind of pent up coming in. But I prefer personally to have one-on-one conversations. That's generally, I'll pull somebody to the side. I don't think that we really need to air all the dirty laundry out, with whatever's going on with somebody in front of, the rest of the team. But there have been, some conversations that I have, said, hop in the truck, we'll take a lap around the city. We've gone, got something to eat, real quick, had a conversation that way where it was a, little less formal, and a little more inviting and positive. That's some of the things I've done personally.
No, that's awesome. I love the, let's jump in the truck and go for a drive.
Yeah.
I've had those conversations, with my kids. It's like, hey, let's go for, a drive or go for, I used to do like breakfast with my boys, one at a time. We would go, and that was a great place for a conversation. And that kind of goes back to what Pam was saying with, having that dinner date with your spouse. Because, and it's not because you're trying to take advantage of it, but, defenses are down and it's more comfortable, right, to have a meaningful conversation. Emotions are calm. So where you do this is very important, and not just for you, but whoever you're having the conversation with. So now we get to, the why, right? Why do we do this? Why is it important to have conversations, right? Because, well, basically, avoiding them costs us trust, it costs us productivity, and, in a business sense, it can cost us money. But that trust is the biggest one, because that transcends every environment, whether it's work, professional, personal. If you lose and it costs you trust, it takes so much to build it back up. So having these conversations builds resilience and supports continuous growth for your team, your organization, your relationships. So who's got an example of maybe how avoiding the conversation cost you. And hey, what? I'll start it out. I'll give you an example. Before I retired, I guess it would have been back 2015. I had a, a boss who was extremely toxic, and I avoided the conversation with him because I knew how it would go. So instead, I shielded my team from him. But by avoiding it, it exploded and got so bad that my only choice was to walk away from the organization because I knew it wasn't going to get any better. So was it his fault, my fault? Well, probably both, because I could have had the conversation with him and hire leadership to say this is the issue we're having, and I chose to go on defensive mode and protect my people. But in doing so, in avoiding that conversation, I only protected them for a while, because when I left, there was no buffer between him and them. And several of them ended up leaving the organization. So that was the cost of avoiding for me. What about you guys? Any example?
So I've had it where in a previous company I worked for, filled in the gap of the branch manager when they quit and sold the company to a larger company. And for the longest time, they avoided conversations about any of their rules about like smoking in the vehicles and other rules. They basically never enforced and never had those crucial conversations with the employees to say, hey, you need to stop doing such and such and improve in these areas. So when I had to step in the role, I basically had to have those crucial conversations when they were a huge problem, instead of having those conversations early on and those adjustments being easier. Now they're a hard adjustment. This is a big deal. This is a major decision that has to be made because you have to stop, right now or make these major adjustments. So not having those crucial conversations early on made it harder for me to do it, because now I'm someone new coming into role, and now I'm the big bad guy telling you have to stop, because these are now habits that we're basically told without being told that, yes, you can do these things, even though you're not allowed to. So even if you're not the person, having that crucial conversation now, if you decide to avoid it, you could be making it harder for somebody else down the road.
Absolutely.
Or somebody else who also has to deal with said individual or said circumstance. If you're avoiding it, you could also be making it more difficult for others and not even realize it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joshua, because while we're avoiding, somebody's got to have this conversation at some point, whether it's you or somebody else. And I mean, and you gave a great example of somebody before you didn't talk about this, and then you come on board trying to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden you're the bad guy, right? It's kind of like politics, right? I don't care what the previous administration did. When you took the lead and you took the job, it's your fault now because you've got to deal with that. And that's what a lot of leaders tend to forget. They want to point fingers. Well, it's like, I didn't start this. No, but you own it now. So own it, step up, and take it on. So that's a great example. I appreciate that. So, we've talked about the why here. So let's step away from the W's and go to the how, right? How do we have these conversations? And this is one of the things we're not going to solve, or we're not going to cover everything today, because the rest of the sessions really dive into the how, but it requires a calm presence, okay? That's where, if you're emotionally charged before you walk in to have one of these conversations, you need to reschedule, okay? Because your emotions aren't going to stay, they're going to increase, right? They're not going to decrease during the conversation. So if you feel emotionally charged, step away, calm yourself, and be present at the time, okay? And you got to go in with intention. Why am I having this conversation? What's the outcome that I'm looking for, right? Not just because, well, it's on the list. I have to talk to the employee, or I need to talk to my spouse because we're married. We're supposed to talk to each other. Well, have an intention behind that. Is it to build a better relationship? Is it to build a better team? Is it to change performance? Whatever the case may be, understand completely of why you're going into the conversation, because once you're in is not the time to try to figure it out, right? You need to have a plan and a strategy beforehand and use some tools, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. We're going to provide you with some tools because crucial conversations are a skill set that only get better with practice, understanding, and knowledge, right? We're going to give you some things, some methodologies, some frameworks to try out, and you have to use them. If I don't use the tools in my toolbox, they just get rusty, right? I don't become a better mechanic or a carpenter if I never pick up the tool. And the tools get better, I want better tools, right? I used to, when I was in high school and during the summer, I did some construction work and I did a lot of roofing, right? And if you've ever done any roofing, you know that it's not fun, but you try to do things, you challenge yourself, right? So my partner and I, we would race to see how fast we could put the nails in the shingles. We were pretty good. I even spent money on this really lightweight hammer, okay? And I thought I was fast until we got a better tool, which was an nail gun. All right. I can't keep up with a nail gun. So why would I keep doing what I'm doing when I have a better method of doing it, a better tool? I'm going to go to that tool. So hopefully we're going to be able to share with you guys some tools and frameworks to use. So let's jump into kind of the structure of a crucial conversation. We believe there's 3 stages. All right. There's the before. How are you preparing? Right? What's your intention? What's the timing? Are you setting the environment correctly? So when I talk about timing, it might not be the best time first thing in the morning on a Friday or the end of the day on a Friday to have a conversation. Maybe you want to move it to Monday. That's something you have to figure out as the leader because it may be the best timing for you, but it may not be the best timing for the person you're having the conversation with. And then during, how are you going to manage those emotions? Because they're going to come up, right? Especially from the other side. All right. How are you going to help manage yours and the person you're having the conversation with? Being aware of what your triggers are helps a lot, right? Because, I know my triggers. One of my triggers is, I live in the Beltway, right? I hate traffic. I hate stupid drivers. And if I'm going to have a conversation first thing in the morning, I want to make sure that I don't get on 66 to drive drive to the appointment because I'm probably going to be upset, or I'm going to set some environment so that I'm not. I'm going to listen to a podcast, maybe some jazz, just things that calm me down so I walk in prepared. And I want to make sure I'm listening and not just, I'm listening to understand, not listening to respond, because that can go back and forth with emotions. And I'm going to make sure, like Sherry said, I want to be kind. If nothing else, I want to approach everything with kindness and respect. I have to use candor. I have to tell you, I don't want to sugarcoat anything, but I can still be kind and respectful. All right. So then after. So this is a period that a lot of leaders forget about. We had the conversation. I get the north-south nod that you understand and agree with what we talked about. And then I think it's over, right? You go out and then I find myself 6 months later having the same conversation again. Well, that's not necessarily the other person's fault. It could be mine because I didn't do any follow-up. I didn't check in. I didn't say, hey, how are things going? Remember we talked about this. How are you doing with that? I'm not holding them accountable, right? Because if the last thing you should be doing in that conversation is setting up what accountability and success looks like going forward. And I'm not reflecting, or maybe I'm not giving them the opportunity to reflect on what we talked about, what needs to change, and what does success look like. All right, let's see. Watch my time here. I haven't got any nasty notes from JT yet saying that I'm way behind. So here's a question. Which stage, the before, during, or after, do you find most challenging and why?
Probably say the after, to be honest with you, because I think that even if it's obviously if it's a difficult conversation, you bring it back up, and any emotions that might have been there during the original conversation kind of pop back up.
Hmm. Okay.
And depending on how persistent you are, in following up, um, it it just kind of snowballs. And I
Yeah.
would I would say the after the checking up on the conversation is probably the most difficult.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would agree. I think too as well because the whole, well, at least part of the goal with the conversation is, I think one of the things that was worried about was like that loss of trust.
Hmm.
Obviously you're having this conversation with the person, maybe they needed an adjustment on something, and then you're with that accountability, you're checking on them. You're checking it. Okay, hey, how are we doing this? Are you doing as what we last spoke about? Are you keeping up with these set items? I feel like at times that person could also feel like, okay, well, you don't trust me to do my job still. And so still trying to show them, yes, we're trying to follow up with you. I'm still on your side. So still trying to reassure that person that they're still valuable after those conversations
Right.
can be a little difficult sometimes
No,
because
I agree. I
I've
agree.
had
I
it
think most
feel
people
like they're
are.
still in trouble, after this
Yeah.
conversation because you're following up. You have given them a checklist that they need to follow now, or those sort of things. So at times they feel like they're still in trouble, even though the conversation and that so-called, slap on the wrist is already over.
Right. And I think most leaders struggle with the after, and well, everybody, because what's the saying? The problem with communication is we think that we've succeeded, and the problem is that we don't, because we don't follow up. We don't get clarity in that conversation. So let's try a little exercise, okay? I want you to think about a real situation that you're facing. Uh, you don't have to share exactly what it is, but tell me what. I'll drop this in the chat real quick. But what makes it crucial? What stage do you think you're struggling with the most, and what outcome would you like if you handled it well? So, what makes it crucial? What stage are you struggling with the most, and what outcome would you like if you handle it well? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. All right, anybody got something they want to share?
Well, I will share a little there. Like a crucial conversation for me, it's a conversation that you really have to have, and you know that in your gut for whatever, whether it's with your husband, your kids, or somebody you work with, or you're in an organization with, or whatever kind of thing. And it's just kind of to me. Uh, Getting your thoughts together as to what you want to say, and try to be open and listen to the responses that you get from the other person, so that you can evaluate things, I guess, better. And then then you find out if you get the outcome that you want, or if it just needs more attention, if that's the right word to use,
Yeah.
for later.
Well, and that's the thing about crucial conversations is you can plan them, you can even script them out sometimes, but you know, it never goes as planned. But if you're
Exactly.
prepared for it, then you're better equipped to pivot as needed. And if you're following a framework and a strategy for it, then nothing's going to surprise you, but you'll see those opportunities to go left, right, or even back away if needed. But if you're not prepared, that's when crucial conversations can go awry.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Let's see. Brett, you want to share a little bit about what you dropped in the chat?
It's even as a parent, you're always a parent, and even when the kids become adults, you're still sometimes interested, obviously, in how they're doing and what you can help. And it's they're an adult, so you got to let them be adults, but at the same time, they're your kids, so you know where that goes. And having that conversation with young adult kids, and sometimes it's because the role has shifted. I'm not the quote unquote parent per se anymore, but they still come to me for advice occasionally, and every now and again they need it, whether they realize it or not. So finding the right um, context to have that conversation sometimes can be a challenge, in my experience.
No, absolutely. And you bring up a great point and using the analogy of a parent, because we're always a parent, but our role as a parent changes, right? Just like we may always be a leader, but our particular role may change at some point, whether it goes up, down, or we become peers. We still have the same skill set that we can use in these conversations. But again, preparing for it, and this exercise was here for a reason because I'm going to give you homework in a minute. But real quick, let's kind of review. We talked about what crucial conversations are. They're high stakes, usually involve difference of opinions, and strong emotions are in there. We went over the 5 W's and the H. Who or why do we have conversations like this? Who is usually involved? Where do we do it at? Okay. What's the topic? What do we do with these conversations? And then how do we hold them, right? What does that look like? And we'll dive more into that in the coming weeks. The 3 stages, the before, during, and after, all of which are important. I'm going to struggle during a conversation if I didn't prepare for it. And when the conversation is over, there's still more work to be done. All right. So, what does homework look like? Looking forward here. Well, first of all, next week. Next session, we're going to be talking about that before stage. Brett's going to lead us through and preparing for those crucial conversations, kind of setting the environment. So, in preparation for that, I want you guys to identify one conversation you've been avoiding. And write down, what are the stakes? What's at stake for this? What emotions are you facing, and what emotions do you think will be faced in that conversation? And what do you hope the outcome will be? Bring it to the next session and we'll discuss. Brett, since you're running the next session, anything else you want them to be prepared for?
Well, just put some thought as you're, going throughout the week into thinking about not only the crucial conversations, maybe the uncomfortable ones you need to have. Think about some of the really, really honest to God good experiences you've had with a conversation. And it can be as mundane as a really interesting conversation with that barista at Starbucks, or it can be a heartfelt, chat with a family member. Think about the context, the emotions, the background of that. And we'll discuss that some more next week.
Awesome. And I love the way Brett's approaching this next one is think about that good conversation because we're more likely to repeat a behavior that we enjoy than one we don't, right? So if we're constantly concentrating on the bad experiences, that makes it harder to have a good conversation. All right, we got a few minutes. Anybody got any feedback for us? What did you think of the sessions? What could we do better? Just throw it out there. We have thick skin.
No, I enjoyed it. I mean, I like hearing everybody's approach, and especially if there's more that of you that are, working still and how you have to approach things. Me, I'm retired, just a full-time artist now. And, but still, I like communicating with other people on this.
I like it. I don't have any, negative feedback. I mean, this is just the first session too, so I look forward to seeing how the rest of them go. So
Awesome. Appreciate that. Anybody else?
Larry, can you go back to that last screen with the homework again?
Oh, you guys are gonna get an email
All right,
in about an
okay.
hour that's gonna have that in there. So
Awesome. You
I'm
giving
trying
me
to
a little
save you
bit,
some. I don't
little
want
bit
to
of
get. I don't want you
anxiety.
to get carpal tunnel and have to write all the time. So,
All right.
all right. All right. If there's nothing else, I appreciate you guys joining us and I love the engagement because, while I can stand up here and talk all day, I'd rather not. I'd rather have your input because that makes it better. Like Sherry said, hearing the perspective from others helps us learn, right? I can tell you what I think I want you to do, but when you hear something from somebody else, it maybe validates that or even gives us another way of looking at things. So thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Larry.
Hey, Larry, you all finished recording?
Oh, hold on.